All right, welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I'm live on location at a unclosed area, which you probably hear some background noise, but I got the virtual background of Columbus representing. I'm excited about my next guest. I've known this guy for a while. I figured with all the news up in Atlanta, with the Hawks getting the number one pick, what better way than to get somebody that's really on the scenes at 92.9 The Game. Please welcome Caleb Johnson back to the Sports Beat. Caleb, I'm excited about having you back on the show. I know it's a busy time in the ATL.
It is, yeah. It's been a fun time, honestly. Is the last couple of weeks. I was on my show. Guess it was about 2 weeks ago now that I was live on 99 The Game when the news broke. I was watching the draft lottery in front of me as I was talking about something completely different. It was just having a conversation on the air about different things, and I had jokingly earlier in my show that day had said, "Well, watch, the Hawks will get the number one overall pick," because no one is very optimistic about that number one overall pick actually turning out to be someone, fitting of that spot. And so I kind of jokingly said that to start my show. And then 3 o'clock came and the draft lottery happened. And I saw the deputy commissioner hold up the Hawks logo with the number one pick. And it was like, wow, this is a real thing that is about to happen. And so since then, it's felt like a pretty swift time of a lot of decisions are about to have to be made for the Hawks, and it's also at the same time very exciting because as much as people would like to say that this year isn't as flashy a draft as years in the past, it's still the number one overall pick, and so you get to decide, the Hawks do, who they want to take, and it's no better position to be in than the driver's seat.
Well, Caleb, I've heard a lot of rumors about what the Hawks want to do with this pick. And listening to sports talk radio in Atlanta, I mean, I've heard talks about them trading the pick, trading Trae Young, trading DeJounte Murray, drafting Bronny James. But I really think that the ideal choice here is to go get the best player in the draft. And I believe that best player is Alex Sarr, the 7'1" Frenchman who can be a post player, a rim protector. He can also take it behind the arc, and he's got a great shot. And I think this is going to be an all-star. And this is the type of player that you could play alongside Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. I would not sleep on DeJounte Murray and trying to get rid of him out of town because the Hawks did give up 3 first-round picks for him. I do think that DeJounte Murray and Trae Young can coexist, but do you think that Alex Sarr could be the final missing piece to get the Hawks to be contenders in the Eastern Conference and possibly make a run back to the Eastern Conference Finals?
I think Alex is a very talented player. I think it's difficult, quite honestly. It's difficult for a lot of us, scouts included, to evaluate international talent. It's just because they're not playing against the same competition that we are judging everyone else on, which is college basketball or the G League or overtime elite. Like there's some form of equal level of talent that we're used to evaluating players on. And so when they're international and just finding their games in the first place is more difficult. And then trying to figure out the level of competition that they're playing, I think, is also sometimes difficult to measure. You end up with a guy who isn't as flashy, as exciting, I guess I should say, as a guy like Victor Wembanyama, who 7'5". There's just not many people who are that tall, who affect the game the way that Wemby does. But a lot of people see elements of Alex Sarr being that type of big man. The fact that you mentioned he's 7'1", he is lanky. He is a very long, type of player who I think has some really solid abilities as far as defensively. Obviously, something that the Hawks need to upgrade. The Hawks also desperately need size, and he brings that to the table. I do wonder about his offensive game. Is it truly polished enough to help a team out right now, or is it something that would take some time to develop? There's also another guy that the Hawks are potentially looking at, Zachary Riza-Shea. He is someone that, I won't lie to you, I've been starting to talk myself into Zachary Riza-Shea as the real option for the Hawks, and it's just simply because this is a 6'10" guy who is quite the ball handler. He is quite the scorer, and he can switch 1 through 5. He can guard your point guard, or he can guard your center. And there are not many players in the NBA who have that skill set. Now, his skill set is very raw, and people wonder if you can truly polish all of the elements of his game, or if some of the deficiencies that he has, where he kind of gets lost on defense, if that's going to just continue on in the NBA, or if that's something that he can continue to work on. So I think, and honestly, I mean, I'm throwing out like Donovan Clingan as well out of UConn. He's another guy that I think should be on the table for the Hawks. A 7'2" guy. He's nearly 300 pounds. Like, he is huge. He is just a dominant, thick force in the paint. That would be a really great big man that I think the Hawks, should be looking at. It seems that from reports of what I've seen over the last, honestly, 24, 48 hours, is that it seems to be between Alex Sarr and Zachary Riza-Shea. And so that's kind of where I've kept my scope and looking at those two guys. Now, you also mentioned a part of this being whether or not that player, who, if it is Alex Sarr, can impact the Hawks right now. And I think, at least from my own personal belief, I'm not sure that the Hawks end up taking this approach, but it feels like when you have a player who is, a rookie and number 1 overall pick, you're kind of setting your franchise towards looking at the future rather than necessarily addressing the right now. And I was there at exit interviews for the Hawks. Feels like weeks ago at this point, as their season ended. And the thing that Trae Young was very point blank about, and he then also went on his own podcast. Trae Young said, "I want to be in Atlanta. I want to be a Hawk, but I want to win, and I want to win now." And I don't know that adding a rookie, no matter what position he plays, no matter what impact he can bring, is the type of win now player. So with that, you're looking at options. You threw out one of them being the fact of, do they trade this number 1 overall pick, and do they go in the win now mode? Now, the metrics tell you that, just looking at the stats, that Trae and DeJounte just don't play well together on the court at the same time. They do well when the other is off the court, but the Hawks are really looking for someone to make an impact together with Trae Young, not off the floor. And so if you go on the basis of Trae and DeJounte don't work together, and if you go with the idea of Trae is looking to win now, and drafting a rookie wouldn't be necessarily doing that, I'm garnering the opinion that I think that the Hawks are going to take the number 1 overall pick, and I think they're going to trade Trae Young, quite honestly, just because their timeline may not match up with his timeline. And then there's the obvious of he and DeJounte don't work together on the floor at the same time. And it's just, you're spending a lot of money because you have to start thinking about, the luxury tax. And so where can you free up money and look towards playing towards the future without giving up, without trading everybody and just going into tank mode like some people suggest? As I think it ends up in a situation where you're looking at trading a Trae Young, also probably trading a guy like Clint Capella, and because he's on an expiring contract, he's only got 1 year left. And so, like, these are the types of changes that I'm expecting to see over the next few weeks. Well, we've got about a month to go until the NBA draft.
Absolutely. The NBA draft is June the 26th, I believe. And I tell you what, I know the Hawks fans are excited. They're going to have a watch party at State Farm Arena. I know. Are you going to be there for that watch party?
I I'm actually looking to be in Brooklyn for the draft itself. I'm going to
That is awesome.
yeah, be
I,
a part of all
I
the
hope that you're able to
festivities
get
there.
there.
Yeah.
That would be incredible. Let's talk about some of these other pieces for the Atlanta Hawks, like DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson. Are they going to be in the long term plans for the GM Landry and where the Hawks want to go in the future?
Yeah, so I think it's a fun game that I got to play. I believe it was yesterday, it was Wednesday, with Dukes and Bell. They brought me on and they listed out names, and they were just like, "Does this player stay or does this player go?" And you mentioned one, DeAndre Hunter, that I believe is going to potentially go, and that's just based off of a little bit of the season overall, the fact that he has dealt with injuries once again, worked his way up back after that point, and played some really great basketball. However, he disappeared, quite honestly, in the play-in game that the Hawks had against the Chicago Bulls, and it didn't look well at all. You throw on the extra factor of a couple days later, we had exit interviews at the Hawks training facility. DeAndre Hunter was not there for exit interviews. He was the only player not injured because Sadiq Bey was injured, and so he didn't show up, which was expected. But he was the only non-injured player not to not show up at exit interviews, which kind of said to me that he didn't really feel he needed to talk to the front office, didn't really feel he needed to talk to the media unless there was some kind of excused absence. But we got none of that information. So if I go off of the kind of up and down season once again that it was for DeAndre Hunter, it's kind of been this way for a while because of those injuries. And given the fact of maybe him just personality wise, just based on some of the things that I've heard inside the locker room, that maybe he doesn't entirely mesh well with this team, would lead me to believe that he is a guy that is looking to play somewhere else. You also mentioned Jalen Johnson. He is 100% a cornerstone of this Atlanta Hawks team. If you start to ask me, who is the guy who is going to be selling jerseys for the Hawks next season, I believe, and it's kind of nice to share my last name with him, to see a bunch of Johnson jerseys at State Farm Arena is what I would absolutely expect to see. I think he is for sure in their long-term plans. I think they will probably solidify that, if not this offseason, next offseason, with a contract extension. That I think Jalen Johnson is here for quite some time. He has just got that exciting style of play that everyone wants to come and see, as long as he can stay healthy as well, which has obviously been a little bit of an issue for him. If he can stay healthy, he is 100% a cornerstone of this team, and an exciting one that I think has that all-star potential.
Caleb, let's talk about the landscape of the NBA. There is a Georgia born player that's really taken the league by storm. He played at Holy Spirit Prep in Atlanta, played 1 year at the University of Georgia. I'm talking about the Ant Man, Anthony Edwards. He's starting to become the most popular player in the NBA. I do believe. I got to be honest, I love the Hawks, but he's my favorite player in the NBA. And I'm pulling for the Timberwolves. They're kind of in a little bit of a hole in the Western Conference Finals. They're down 1-0 to the Dallas Mavericks. But in your opinion, is Anthony Edwards starting to become the best basketball player that's born in Georgia? I know that Dominique played here, but he's actually born in North Carolina. Do you think that Anthony Edwards, along with great NBA players like Walt Frazier, and you also have Jaylen Brown, but do you think that the Ant-Man might end up being the best player born in Georgia?
I definitely think Anthony Edwards has that potential. I mean, I think right now Anthony Edwards is the best American basketball player, because of course we know, with the international surge, you've seen a lot of greats be at the top of the sport. I think you've got to put Luka Doncic, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who's of course from Canada, up in that area. You can't forget the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo being a part of that conversation, Nikola Jokic being a part of that conversation as well. But those are all international players. When it comes to American-born players, I think Anthony Edwards right now is number one on that list. And you talk about, from the state of Georgia. I feel like I would have to do the deep dive and like look at all of the names, but and you don't want to get caught up too much in recency bias, but we all have a tendency to do that, just because it's what we're seeing right in front of us. He is showing that potential for sure, and he's just so exciting and fun to watch. And I think that's an element of that. We've seen the surge in big men. I listed some names there, and whether it's Giannis, whether it's Jokic, whether it's Joel Embiid, if you wanted to put him amongst but these are big men who are, making their names as some of the best in the sport. It's fun to see a guy who is smaller. We had that run obviously for quite some time, with Steph Curry being potentially one of the best in the NBA, if not the best. And he was more of our height kind of thing. And so it's fun to see the guy who plays that guard position be the dominant player in the league, because of the ways that he scores, and because of um, I don't know. There's just something a little bit different when you've got a guard who is one of the best in the league, versus the big man, because we can aspire to be Anthony Edwards when we're out, maybe in our driveway with a basketball hoop. I don't know that I can do anything about my height and trying to get to 7 foot or 7'5" like Victor Wembanyama. And so I think that's part of the appeal as well with Anthony Edwards. And I will add this too, right, wrong, or indifferent, because sometimes it is very clumsy, and comes with a lot of bleeps on air. But Anthony Edwards is authentically himself, and I think we have not really seen too many athletes who are unapologetically themselves, and how they talk and how they dress and how they just go about their business. And it's really nice to see an athlete who is at the top of his sport, who is not necessarily so polished. He is just himself. He is Anthony Edwards through and through. And I feel like we have all come to learn about him, to laugh at all of the jokes that he's constantly cracking, and just appreciate him for the really talented basketball player he is.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping it's Minnesota Boston so we can have the Jalen Brown Ant Man matchup, and it's something that people in Atlanta can root for, because we root for athletes that come out of this state. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've seen it before. But Caleb, one more thing before I get you out of here. You got a lot going on at 92.9 Game. You're going to be up in Brooklyn, hopefully for the NBA draft. You got SEC Media Days coming up in July as we're getting ready for football. The Georgia Bulldogs have been in the media with the whole NIL thing with Florida, and it's a mess right there. But really, what is your most favorite part about, like, once you wrap up everything that's been going on in with the Atlanta Hawks and the NBA? Now, what are some of the things that you look forward to when it comes to sports, getting ready for the upcoming football season?
What's fun, honestly, in this summer period is because I'm not attached to any one thing in this time frame other than the Hawks. If any Hawks news break, I'm obviously jumping on that stuff. Is just the ability to do a little of this, do a little of that. I spend, probably a couple of, well, when the Braves are in town, I'll spend a couple of games at the ballpark covering the Braves. Atlanta United, I get to pop in on them more so as a fan, but still getting to have the time to go check them out as a fan. I know later on there'll be some other like international soccer coming to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, so that'll be fun. OTAs, we're in the middle of OTAs with the Falcons, and so I always like to get up to Flowery Branch and go check out what's going on with them this year. And it feels like this year, just given the construction stuff that is happening up at Flowery Branch, and the fact that they're not going to have fans just during that particular time, it feels a little more like I want to go check it out just because there's less eyeballs on things going on. And it feels a little bit more special. It's sometimes when you get that special privilege of having access to things, you want to take advantage of it. I know I think of my time when COVID was going on, and the NBA had the season where fans were not allowed in the arenas, I was one of the media members covering games, and it just feel, it's special of getting to have that access when everyone else doesn't. Other than that, yeah, you mentioned Georgia football. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on what's going on with the Bulldogs this summer. And always curious to see what new things Kirby is going to come up with at SEC Media Days of they're the hunted, not the hunting, or however he is going to make it seem that Georgia is this lowly program that everyone is counting out, and that he is trying to rally his guys. So it's it's a fun time. Like I said, not being attached to a sport that is to a team that is playing currently, because I have the freedom to kind of pick and choose what's going on. And then, as always, this is a big time for me in hosting shows. I'll be on the air on 92.9 The Game on Sunday from 2 to 5, and then on Monday from Memorial Day, I've got a show from 6 to 10. So it's always fun getting to host shows on the air in Atlanta.
There's no question about it. I always enjoy listening to you on 92.9 The Game when you're doing your sports updates and hosting shows. And keep up the good work. Appreciate you coming on the Sports Beat once again, and looking forward to seeing all the work that you got coming up in the future.
Absolutely, man. You take care.
All right. Hey, before I let you go, though, tell all my listeners, all my viewers, how they can follow you on social media and how they can listen to you on 92.9 The Game.
Yep. So my handle on I still call it Twitter is at ATL Johnson 18. If you want to follow the radio station at 92.9 The Game. If you want to listen to the radio station, whether you're in Columbus, in Atlanta, wherever you're listening from, the easiest way to do that is the Odyssey app. You download the app, you sign up, get an account, and then look for 92.9 The Game, and you can listen live or go back and catch stuff that you may have missed earlier in the day. I know I was doing that earlier today. I found out that Andy and Randy were talking about me earlier today, and so I had to go back and listen to make sure they weren't saying anything bad. But it was just that Randy McMichael believes that because I'm a quiet person typically, that I must be able to fight. And so I said, all right, well, I'll gladly take that one. But yeah, make sure to get the Odyssey app and listen to us 92.9 The Game.
All right. Thanks, Caleb, for coming on the show, and definitely looking forward to having you back on.
Absolutely.
All right, Caleb Johnson from 92.9 The Game. That's it. That's our show. Thank you, everybody, once again, for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Facebook page, and I'm also on the X. Have a great